these were the crucial livelihood opportunities for people in these semi-arid areas. So we necessarily needed to look at it as a whole. So what we did is, when looking at the biodiversity aspect, the land has its own way, the land and the biodiversity components within that particular eco-space is very natural to that climatic zone. So the local communities there know that component well. We engage the local communities in managing the land, and at times it was very interesting when we found that some things that we outsiders do not see. The local community would tell us, you know, the fish would be moving up to spawn higher up. And when we were putting check dams, these were actually obstructing the whole biodiversity aspect. That was when we realized the need to put fish ladders on these check dams, or look at the local agrobiodiversity to support that particular eco-space. So that was one aspect for the biodiversity, but we also felt the need to look at the agrobiodiversity because the people were dependent on the foods that were very local. Whereas, normally speaking, for production, we would look at those crops that have a market production outside. So this was a whole stress for the people in terms of how do they consume the food that naturally grows in the area, and that could be a little more resilient to the climate variation as compared to crops that were grown for the market outside. But then we realized we needed to look at the blend of the two, because people do need production, they need at the same time to conserve the local agrobiodiversity. So we have found some ways in which we can do this combination while we conserve their food security. And the other part, what we realized, which was very important in terms of the economics of land degradation. If we have to take a methodology and prove it to the decision makers at the government level, at those in the corporate sector who do the funding, all that they ask for, please show us where is the money. So we decided that unless we talk the language that they understand on the one hand, so put in economic terms, what were the returns that people were getting with evidence from the ground? So we realized that evidence at every stage, collecting the data right from the beginning at every stage with every group of people and consistently over the years, is the only aspect that actually convinces decision makers. And I think over the years, we have been able also to convince the local government authorities, state or even national government authorities to realize that there is merit in doing the treatment of the land in the way we do, including the agriculture production systems, a system which maintains soil health. This is a very important component which comes in as a trade-off sometimes when we look at land management. You get the land productivity increase and farmers switch over to chemical agriculture. How do we blend the two? You know, because we need to look at sustainability. And I think the studies over the years and collecting data together with the local community as part of the research team. You know, this whole thing works together towards convincing the people locally to manage the practices, as also to convincing ourselves and other practitioners, and then to convincing decision makers, even at the government and policy level.
Thank you. So maybe now I would ask, because it's like a classic question, but it's very interesting because now we look back on what has been done, but it's nice to look forward as well. And I know, for example, Practical Action Sudan has something very interesting going on. So maybe if you could tell us a little bit about your plans and aims for the next 5 years or decades, depending on how you EU strategy goes. So maybe starting with Awadala, since you don't want to say too much because we have a special event after, but just a little something.
Okay, thank you again. In practical action, you have long experience in integrated natural resource management and also with working with the community, and also you have experience in the climate change adaptation. What we do in our strategy, we are going to make a lot of demonstrations, and the results are the good result to make sure that could be taken by the others to scale up. Because at practical action, we believe that we can't solve all the problem on our own.
Maybe Mr. Rao?
Briefly, yeah. We have embarked on something in 2018, and as I was telling you, we are on some 6 million acres of village forests, village pastures, and so-called village wastelands. At a very high level, what we want to do is debunk the notion of tragedy of commons and make it the promise of commons. Because whatever has been told to us over the last 50 years was a half-truth at best. So how do you reposition it in a different paradigm? That's what is the essential focus on. Now we are on something like 6 million, and our goal is to go to some 30 million acres of land, when India has some 200 million acres of such land. That's the 25% you have been talking about. At least have 1/5 in some better productive management. Now that for FES to do, it's humanly impossible, and I would say not desirable also. So the challenges that we have, the pathways that we have chosen are threefold. How do we amplify this action on the ground with partnerships with some 80, right now we have some 80 NGOs with whom we are partnering, but can we have some 800 NGOs, each in their own blocks? And with the passion that they have, the mobilization that they have, how can we add these layers of property rights, the tenure bit of it, or devolution? And in India, we also have a Right to Employment Act, where the government pumps in something like $5 billion US every year for soil, land, and water management. How does that money used locally to create a better delta? That's what is the action on the ground, and we are partnering with 5 state governments, some 80 NGOs right now. The second pathway we have chosen for ourselves is what is the knowledge available? As I was saying, this is no great rocket science. So whatever knowledge is required for sustainable land management, which is there in this event itself, if only that could be taken to village action. All scientists, researchers, well-meaning people, we create the science and knowledge, but is it really going to the village level? That is the challenge which we are trying to address. Of course, advancing knowledge as such is another one. The third one is influencing. How can we sit with governments? How can we sit with judiciary? How can we sit with media people, journalists, and so on, so that this perception of tragedy of commons or everybody's property is nobody's property, it's fashionable to say it, but can we turn it around and call it promise of commons, so that this kind of better citizenship, a civic engagement, not only in rural areas, in the way we manage our sidewalks, our bus stops, the collective spaces, which are equal grounds for rich and poor to meet, how can they be better managed? That is the influencing piece that we are going about. And I think it's gaining quite a lot of traction. There are good donors who are coming in, which is very important. And what makes me happy is government signing up. They are all interested in SDGs, in NDCs, in bond. So how we connect our proposition to the larger aim is the trick of the trade, and then there's quite a lot of uptake from governments. NGOs, there's quite a lot of traction. In NGOs, what we have realized is we have to celebrate other NGOs rather than making it an FES agenda. Most of NGO collaborations fail because of egos, fiefdoms, That's a killer. We will never be able to address land degradation or whatever at the scale that is necessary if we get in. So what we are saying is, let there not be a mention of FES, that's fine. If it is your agenda and if you are doing something on commons, that should be celebrated. So how do you make some other 100, 200, 500 NGOs speak for commons rather than an FES? That's the larger philosophy and thinking and action.
So as you mentioned, there's a lot still to do in India, but at least there is Vatar, so you're not the only one in India. You have Vatar to help you too, and this. So what are the plans for the next years?
Well, the need is really huge in India, and I think even with the targets that are set, there's a lot more to do. So I think we have decided that our commitment will continue in the same sphere. And what we would take forward and see how we can enhance, the knowledge and skills is a way of getting many more to become aware. So while we focus on, also take up a lot more of action research on the ground, applied research, disseminate the methodologies and learn from one another. That's one of the ways in which we go forward, is because the contexts are very distinct and unique in different parts of the country. And the other important point we realized is we cannot do it alone. It's not just NGOs and we together with the rural communities. We desperately need to work together with the corporate sector, with the local government, get the government to work with us and we work together with the government. So there's a lot of give and take over there, so that we can all together put in our energies and strength and capacities and knowledge towards this bigger goal of achieving the various targets and now the LDN targets that we have set for the country.
Well, thank you to all of you. It was very inspiring and very interesting to see how the projects go on after all of those years. So I know that Dr. Marcela de Souza, Vatar has a side event tomorrow at 6 p.m. in Met 13. So it's on the second floor. So if you want to join and hear more about their activities, you're all invited. It's an open event at 6 p.m. tomorrow, Met 13, second floor. And in the meantime, if you want to stay, you are very welcome to do so, since the next event and the last event of this Land for Life program part of the day will be presented by Practical Action Sudan and UNEP, which is a partner in this program, and will address the second phase of the Wadi El Kou Catchment Management Project, and how exactly the communities challenge vulnerability through integrated water resource management in Darfur. So we will begin the next activities in 2 minutes. Thank you. And if you want to discuss with our... Oh, do you want to say something, Awadara?
Yeah, I'd like to invite the people to attend the next session of the special presentation by Practical Action. And we have, I think, short film people can see. Yes, we have the practical solution for the problem that been raised. So please be with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone.